Hello, you're watching Everard Junction, and this video will be part 2 of the how to build a model railway series that I'm doing on this small extension that I've built on the layout. So in part 1 I built this baseboard. It's about 6.5 foot long, something along those lines, and it is nice and secure and level. It's all secured to the floor. I've got it put up against the roof joist here, and it doesn't interfere with the canal scene too much. Yes, I know the corner juts out a little bit, but that'll be sorted. The plan will be to extend the canal scene and get it to tie in with all of this a little better, but that'll be a future video. So since the last video I have been busy removing the scrapyard scene, and as you can see it's now gone. It actually reveals another scene that was underneath it, which some of you may remember, others may not. It was just a small road that ran to where a signal box was, but it's all been cleared up, it's all flat, all the ballast is gone, all the track has been saved, including the point work. So it's now a blank canvas ready for me to begin doing the track planning for the carriage sidings. There's loads of different ways to plan your track. Some can get quite intensive, others are much more simple. I'm just going to show you how I do it. This is just my personal preference over doing this for a few years now. It's by no means the method that you should follow, and if you have other ideas, by all means use them. I've used layout design software in the past. Also I've taken like careful measurements of the area I've got and then tried to plot a plan on paper. The layout design software is actually pretty good, but for me personally, what I find the best to do and what I love to do if I can with track planning is to actually get a baseboard that is blank with nothing on it and get the track on there and do it for real. Before I go and buy a load of points, you can get these from the Pico website. These are the Pico turnout plans. They just you download them as a PDF and then you can print them out, and they are the actual size of the points, and you pop them down and you can see how much space they're going to take up without having to go out and buy them. So it's very useful for planning where your points are going to go and things like that. And for ordinary straights, you can either use any track you've got lying around, or you can just use a simple straight bit of paper, or just draw a pencil line on the table. So the idea I've got for this area is obviously there'll be some carriage sidings. It's going to start off on the left hand side over here, and it's going to sweep in over to this side, and we'll have sidings down here. And then what I'm thinking is it's going to branch across with various points. We'll have some more sidings, and then there'll be a head shunt which should be long enough for a 3-car DMU, and then that will run up the top here where we'll have something like a fueling point and some areas where I can store DMUs of at least 3 cars in length. What I'm going to try and do is to not overdo it with the track. It's something I've really tried with this layout, to try and make the layout look like a sort of model place that happens to have a railway running through it, rather than just a load of baseboards and track. It's really easy when you're presented with a nice blank canvas like this to just go, oh well, I'll put a piece of track there, and you just end up cramming the entire board with track until you effectively just have a giant fiddle yard, or something like a giant car park for your trains. Very little room for scenery. And when you fill it full of rolling stock, it looks very cluttered. So even though it's really tempting to try and get that extra couple of inches on the length of a siding, or that extra line squeezed in that small gap, resist the temptation, because it will look better once it's scenic. Less is more. Having said that though, these are sidings, so there are going to be a number of tracks, but I'm going to do my best to not overdo it. I don't actually need any of the storage space on here. I've got plenty of room below deck in the fiddle yards. This is purely a scenic area, so most of the time when it's actually being used, it might only have 2 rakes of carriages in it and 1 DMU. That's what I like. I like to have the scene looking as realistic as possible. So ordinarily your rolling stock would be out earning money, it wouldn't be sat in the sidings. So we'll see how it goes, but that's the plan. Okay, so I've done my planning, reasonably happy with it, might make some changes, but pretty good so far. You get an idea, I've just put some coaches down there to give you an idea of scale. So the sidings are quite lengthy actually, not too bad. So plenty of room for storing 6-7 coach trains, so that shouldn't be a problem. So what I've gone for is a group of 6 sidings, got 3 outer sidings and then 3 inner ones. The inner ones are going to be for cleaning and stuff, and then the ones on the edge be more sort of a holding area, storage. I might even put like a big shed or something going along there, not sure, but the middle section will certainly be where all the sort of maintenance and activity goes on with regards to cleaning carriages, and then the outside section will purely just sort of sit there waiting to be used. Coming across, there's those three inner sidings, which will be used for the cleaning and stuff. Have walkways, things like that. That comes across and it goes into a head shunt down there, which is more than long enough for a 3-car DMU. So that DMU could go there, run through that freeway point, and I've got 2 sidings that can be used for holding DMUs there. And then there's also another siding here, which I might do like a fuel point or something, but equally it could also be somewhere for the station pilot to sit where it's not in use, or where other pilots could sit if I have more than one shunter. The entrance is just a single line which goes into a curved point, and then that goes into 3 small streamline right hand points, and that gets me everything I need going forth into the yard. The curve over here is a 4th radius curve. It would be too tight to use a 4th radius curve on something like the main line or something like that, but in a yard situation I think I can just about get away with it. It's reasonably relaxed, and it's only 1 section. I might actually be able to cut it down and use a little bit less of it. There'll be a curved point sitting in here. Well, that one will be pulled out, that's facing the wrong way, so it'll branch off from the branch line, go into the single line, round the curve, through the points, and then into the yard. I can't really move the board any further over or twist it because of the joist that holds the roof of the house up. If I put the board in a place where I'd have to make a cutout or something for that joist, then it would end up being smack bang in the middle, or it would seriously encroach into the board, which would mess up the scenic look, and it would also reduce perhaps some of the operational stuff I could do with regards to siding length. So I'm quite happy to make a little compromise and have a slightly tighter than I would like curve. But still, it's 4th radius, so absolutely no piece of rolling stock is going to have a problem negotiating that. There's a bit of a closer look. So we'll come along there, through all this point work depending on where you want to go, then into your yard. I left space here, here, and there'll probably be a bit of room in there as well for scenic stuff. There'll also be room at the end for perhaps a small office or something, car park, things like that. Plenty of room for depot lights, some room over here for perhaps fuel tanks and things. Again, try and bunch the track close together to give me as much room as I can for additional scenery and try and break up the yard a little bit. Over here, I think the plan will be just to keep it simple and just sort of waste ground grass, perhaps a small bit of tarmac in somewhere where there might be a little hut or something. But I like the nice unbroken view that you get to the sweeping curve. I really like the sweeping curve. I like it to be a prominent feature on this area of the layout, so I think if this area in the foreground is just nice and simple, nicely done but simple at the same time, not too much going on, your eye will be drawn to look at the trains going along the curve, and you'll also be drawn to the little suburb scene we've got going on at the back. All of this will be motorised, so all the points will be operated from a control panel, and I also plan to have some uncoupling magnets for my KDs so that the shunters can bring in the rolling stock, uncouple it automatically, leave, collect more stock, or go elsewhere in the yard. So that will allow me to do some nice little movements, and it'll also be good for filming and doing some interesting running sessions. The electrics will just be a continuation of the bus wire, so the buses are running currently along underneath that baseboard, supplying the layout's power. I'm just going to branch off of that, come along here, probably up the centre, and then I've got plenty of opportunity to wire all the droppers, and I can also power the motors and any additional lighting and other features that I might want to use. So that's the planning done. I know roughly what I want to achieve. I know roughly where the track needs to go. Quite happy with my selection of points. So the next job is to move on to the beginning stages and actually start building the layout on this board. Okay, so I've got most of the bits and pieces I'm going to need to start things off, and the first job will be the cork. I'm going to put a nice bed of cork down. I've got these nice big rolls, so I can put them this way, run them up like that, and I cover the whole lot in cork, and then I can cut some finer strips to actually raise the track up slightly, give it a bit of a profile when the ballast goes on. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is just rough up the surface slightly. This is something you won't need to do if you've built your baseboard out of MDF or plywood or chipboard or whatever, but because I'm using what was originally intended to be a piece of furniture, it has a veneer on it, so it's very, very smooth to the touch. Now it does take glue. I have glued model railway stuff to this sort of thing before. The small extension over here that holds the engine shed is the same material, and you can just ballast and glue straight to it, but I want my cork to stick really nicely, so I am going to rough up the surface ever so slightly. I don't want to take the veneer off, I just want to put a key into it, because at the moment it's very smooth. If I was to go through it, I'd create a huge amount of dust up here, and I wouldn't really get any extra level over what I'd already got, because you just sand down to the chipboard underneath and you just make that really smooth. So I'm just going to skim over it, just roughen up the surface a little so it takes the PVA glue a little bit better. Okay, I've roughened it up. It should take some glue a little bit better now. I've got a nice big roll of cork that should cover at least half of the distance. I've got a few rolls of it, so plenty to go around. That is the cork in question, if you're interested. There's the product code just there. So I will roll this out onto some PVA glue, of course, and then weigh it down, and then when it's dry we'll have a nice bed for scenic material and for the track itself as well. Okay, so I've laid down a nice layer of cork, runs the whole length of the board. I just used the method you just saw, so I just literally just rolled it and weighed it down with some tinned food and just let it dry. And it's dried really nicely, it's nice and flat, as you can see. And then we've got the joins to the next piece. That's still drying at the moment, and I've put another piece down over here, so I just cut an L shape. Found it was actually easier to put it down on the glue, get it all nice and flat, and start the drying process, and then just with a sharp blade just to run around the edge using the baseboard edge as a guide to just cut it to the right size, and then obviously it'll be trimmed in the corners there, but I need to wait for that to dry fully before I do that. Popped a little piece in the corner here, again that needs to be trimmed, but it goes on very well, and just use some reasonably heavy objects just to weigh it down. Just a quick tip that I've learned whilst doing this, I used this batten on the edge to get things started, and I just clamped it down, but the cork, it is porous and it does let the glue flow to the other side if it wants to, especially with a bit of pressure. What I ended up doing was gluing this batten to my cork sheet, so I did have to get a screwdriver and a sharp blade on a scalpel and just be a little bit careful and prise it off, and you can see where it was clamped, it had attempted to glue itself to the cork sheet. So it's just something worth bearing in mind. If you use a lot of glue when you go to glue the sheet down, if you put some particularly heavy objects on it or clamp anything, just make sure that they're not going to stick to the cork. For example, a piece of timber, as I've discovered, sticks to it rather well. So that concludes part 2. We've planned the track, we know what we want to do, we've got the track, it has now arrived, and we now have a solid baseboard with a nice foundation to take the track. So in part 3 we'll lay the track and start marking out where point motors and the electrics are going to need to run.